Yeah, so welcome everyone. And today's first talk will be from Samantha on Plant Futures. And it will basically be an introduction to UC Berkeley's Plant Future initiative and how students can get involved in case they want to expand the Plant Futures initiative to their respective universities in Canada. This will be followed by a talk from Ram on sustainable architecture and how these traditional ways could be incorporated in the buildings moving forward. And finally, I'll be giving a talk on scholarship applications for Canadian federal grantings like NSERC, granting, scholarships like that. So with that, I'll first invite Samantha to give a brief talk. So Samantha is the CEO of Plant Futures, and she has done a really wonderful job. And they have a wonderful conference every year called PFI Initiative. And I think I'll let Samantha talk more on that. So Samantha, whenever you want to share your screen, go ahead. Yeah, looks good.
Okay, awesome. Great. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Sam. I'm currently the program director and one of the co-founders for the Plant Futures initiative, which I'll tell you more about today. I started this program when I was a master's of public health student at UC Berkeley. I graduated last year and I went to Berkeley to study public health because I was very interested in plant-based food and food systems. And to my surprise, there weren't very many classes or resources for students who wanted to work in the plant-based food sector. I was really trying to find career pathways and then my niche at Berkeley and couldn't find it. So I ended up starting my own program and my own class and launched it while I was a student. And it ended up becoming an academic course at UC Berkeley for credit. And it's now a nonprofit organization. And we're working on expanding our program, starting it on other campuses. And I'm going to share more information towards the end about how to start a Plant Futures chapter on your campuses as well. But I'll give some background about the organization first. So we are educating, equipping, and empowering the next generation of ethical leaders and entrepreneurs to accelerate transitions to healthy, regenerative, just, and plant-centric food systems. And our mission is to provide the missing bridge between college education and right livelihoods, the generation of rewarding new jobs and entrepreneurial ventures. By preparing and empowering students and young professionals with transformative learning experiences, internships, and invaluable network of relationships, Plant Futures participants will be equipped to be exceptional ethical leaders, enlightened eaters, and systems innovators. The plant futurists that the world desperately needs and deserves to be survivable, healthy, and just. So why are we focusing on plants? If we shifted globally to a plant-centered diet, the world's food-related emissions would drop an incredible 70% by 2050. A plant-centric food system would also be far more equitable than our current food system, ensuring that all people would have access to healthy food. Diet can also be a powerful and transformative lever of food systems change and has tremendous benefits for human health as well. As some of you might know, diet is the #1 cause of death in the US. And as awareness of the impacts of diet on personal and planetary health grows, the demands for plant-based food has grown rapidly over the last decade. So in response, the plant-based food sector is growing really fast, creating new opportunities for students and young professionals in the field. Today's college students are really excited about plant-centered diets and jobs in the plant-based sector, presenting an opportunity to align values, actions, and rewarding careers. So why are we doing this? Collectively, we're hungrier than ever to build plant-centered food systems, but we're missing a key ingredient: talented people with access to career pathways. And that's how the Plant Futures initiative was born. As I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of students in academia, especially who are super interested in working in food systems, specifically plant-based food systems. And the plant-based sector is growing very rapidly, and they're looking for talent. They're looking for students, for young professionals to work for their companies, and it's growing. So we're really trying to fill that gap between academia and the sector. So Plant Futures launched, as I mentioned, last year or a couple of years ago at UC Berkeley while I was still a student. I was a second year in the public health student, and it was a 2-part class. We had a weekend symposium and a semester-long challenge lab course. And our program after the first year received the highest ratings at UC Berkeley's business school, and it will continue to be offered at Berkeley next year for academic credit as well through the Haas School of Business and through the public health school as well. It received approval to be for academic credit at both schools, and it is a multidisciplinary program, so it's open to students from any program. Both undergraduates and graduates are able to join. So we've also been building out a college chapter network because dozens of universities and students from different parts of the world have asked us to participate in the program after we ran it at Berkeley, which signaled to us an unmet need and opportunity. So that's why I decided to grow the initiative and turn it into a nonprofit organization, which I'm currently running as my full-time job. And part of the nonprofit organization is expanding our program, like I mentioned, to other universities and working with students at different campuses to start our program, to also build the Plant Futures community and to really connect them to jobs and to professionals in the field. So a little bit more about the actual class. So in January 2021, a couple of years ago, we kicked off with the first part of the course, a 2-day symposium that provided an immersive dive into the key issues, creative tensions, and opportunities emerging in the plant-based food sector. It featured 35 experts the first year we ran it, and we had different key innovators in the field, including CEOs of top plant-based food companies. So here are some of the speakers that we had the first year. You might recognize some of them. We had the CEO of Miyoko's Creamery. We had some actors from documentaries. The founder of Beyond Meat had a really awesome lineup. And then we also had total attendees, over 500 students from different campuses, in addition to UC Berkeley students. So that again was another signal for us that there is a lot of interest in this topic outside of California and outside of the Berkeley community. And just this past January, we had our second symposium, the Countdown, Exploring the Future of Plant-Centric Food Systems. And we had even a bigger turnout this time. We had around 700 total attendees. We had students from 53 campuses join us, and it was again offered for academic credit for UC Berkeley students, and for UCLA students as well received academic credit this year. And we had a lot of amazing speakers cover a whole variety of different topics in food systems, specifically plant-based food, everything from farming, agriculture, innovation, tech, public health, nutrition, everything really happening in the sector, and tied it to what's currently happening in food systems and to careers that students are interested in. So these are some of the speakers that we had at this year's event who you might recognize. And a lot of the bigger companies, some of them are based in California, but we had companies represented from different parts of the world were there as well. So this is the symposium highlights video from 2021 from a couple years ago. I'm going to play this short clip because I think it gives a really great overview of the topics that we discuss and cover in our program. So let me just see if this works. And let me start this. Plant-based food sector during the spring 2021 semester. Please enjoy some highlights from this year's conference.
We should be looking at the confluence of what's best for people, best for the planet, and most ethical. No person of decent conscience should accept cruelty on the menu, and the simple fact is that the modern diet puts cruelty on the menu. We should all eat like the world depends on it.
Food is supposed to be a vehicle for the delivery of nutrients and healthy forms of energy to our body.
We didn't really understand much about the microbiome until fairly recently. And now we're starting to understand it, and we're seeing these connections that are so incredibly powerful for human health and human physiology. And there's this special connection that exists between the plants in our diet and the microbes in our gut. And to me, this is the key to human health.
Food is an opportunity for us to change our relationship, not only with our own health and the planet's, but our relationship with all living beings with whom we share it. The real challenge for leadership isn't having the best product on the market, but growing the company as a healthy living organism while growing the technology and products. This is where you have to grow from being a founder and brilliant inventor to being a leader.
It's very important that we understand the system dynamics of world building and how we create an emergent future. This takes two essential elements, imagination and will. And those just happen to be the same characteristics that entrepreneurs, just are their basic DNA. So the union of entrepreneurship with systems change is absolutely an essential marriage.
I think transparency has to be a fundamental value. Because it's food, right? And so we are asking people to put things in their body, and that's a pretty sacred request.
So while there's an undeniable and growing interest in plant-based diets, the consumption of meat is still rising globally, driven by population growth, urbanization, and rising incomes in developing nations. As soon as people become rich, they want to eat like us, Westerners.
So what this amounts to is that farmed animals, despite contributing about 1/5 of global calories and 1/3 of global protein, contribute the vast majority of greenhouse gas emissions and use the vast majority of land that food systems use. Farmed animals and their resource needs contribute about 16% of global greenhouse gas emission, and this is from the most recent numbers of the United Nations, reflecting a base year of 2010. If we eat mostly plants due to that concept of ecological efficiency, we can grow everything we need using far less land.
And it's interesting because through history, we've expanded our moral realm and our moral norms as we learn about the world. So today, things that are obvious to us were not so obvious to earlier generations.
Because what happened to me is I began to get a symbiotic relationship with this young calf named Rowdy Girl. She began to show me distinctly that the cows out there in the pasture had lives of their own, that they appreciated their own lives, that they loved each other like family.
Was when they were talking about veganism, they were ignoring the challenges that people outside of their scope might face. After watching all of these documentaries, even though they were great, and I would even credit them for inspiring my work, I'm like, wow, they are all centered around white men. And even the people that they used to speak about the issues, they always, older white men. And I'm like, if you keep marketing to the same group, then other populations are just going to completely miss the message.
Plant breeders have access to incredible diversity as they are working and the potential to select for whatever we ask them to. But more often than not, they are asked to make improvements within a very rigid system of market commodity standards. As we think about regenerative agriculture and the ways of eating and of growing that are going to sustain us into the future, and also the business opportunities to meet those demands, I think we have to think about and invest in the types of seeds and also the seed keepers who support that system.
When we think about protein, plant protein and plant-based, in the last 5 years, it's been incredible. It's for the first time, I believe, here in the US, we are making so-called plant-based food that actually tastes really, really good. And that is driving a lot of attention to it.
All right, I'll pause it right there. Plant-based food sector during the spring 20. Sorry, I thought I paused it. Let me see. Okay, great. Yeah, so that was an overview of the types of topics we covered in 2021. This past year in January had a similar variety of topics, a bunch of different speakers covering everything and anything happening in the plant-based sector. So it was pretty awesome. And after the event last year, we actually received some media coverage as well. So we were featured in large outlets like Food Navigator, One Green Planet, and the next slide, you can see the European Association of Agriculture Environmental Ethics newsletter also covered what we're doing. And more recently, we were featured in Veg Out and Green Biz for our symposium that happened this past January. So then moving on to the Plant Futures Challenge Lab, this is the applied learning part of the course where students get to work directly with companies in the plant-based sector. So what we did after the weekend symposium, we took the experience that students had there and the knowledge they had gained from that weekend, and we applied it to real world problems in the second part of the class, which is the Innovation Challenge Lab. So Berkeley students received 2 units of academic credit last year when this course kicked off. This year, they're receiving 3 units of academic credit. In our first year, these are the companies that we worked with. You might recognize some of them. And we had a total of 30 undergrad and graduate students from business, from public health, nutrition, data science, food science, and other programs who work together on interdisciplinary teams. And they had the opportunity to work directly with mentors from leading plant-based food companies. So they got to work with CEOs, with the VP of marketing, with policy leads at these organizations, and had a really awesome experience on both the student and the mentor end. And as you can see, we had a whole variety of organizations from different parts of the plant-based sector, including CPG, a food operator, a tech company, a venture firm, and a trade group. And we select mentors from these organizations who are able to guide the students throughout the semester through their project, and the students are teaching the mentors as much as mentors are teaching the students. So it really is a reciprocal learning experience for both the students and the mentors involved at the organizations. And these are our current partners in our 2022 course, which is currently in session. We have another great variety of partners from the plant-based sector working on a whole bunch of innovation challenges. And it's really interesting because a lot of these companies are raising a lot of money, they're growing very quickly, and they really are on the cutting edge of innovation in the plant-based sector. So to be able to work directly with some of these companies and work on some of the biggest challenges they're facing is a really cool, unique experience for the students. And we're really trying to grow our program so that this class is accessible for students all over the globe. And then I have a quick recap of the Challenge Lab course. But, you know, time, at least for now, we can always come back to it. But I'll move on to our ecosystem slide. So this is a recap of the Plant Futures ecosystem and the different parts of our ecosystem that I discussed. So on the left, we have our community of students and young professionals joining us from different campuses across the world. We have student co-founders and student leaders at different campuses who are helping us get the community up and running at their school. And they often work with a team of students that we help them with recruiting, and a faculty ambassador at their campus who's interested in this topic and who can help support get things off the ground on their campus. And then on the right side, you see our professional partners in our Challenge Lab course from different parts of the sector. And we connect through our Challenge Lab and through our programming students to these professional partners and mentors from these organizations, who then ultimately go on to get internships and jobs. And that's what we really want to do through this course, is give students an opportunity to get the hands-on experience so that they can develop the skills they need to apply for jobs at these organizations. So to recap, we think of Plant Futures as a bridge. On one side, we have bright students who are super talented and passionate about food systems change, but they don't know how to get there, how to work in food systems, and don't always have the network or connections necessary to work in such a new sector. And on the right side are the companies looking for talent and to find innovative solutions to key pain points that they're facing in their organizations, but they don't have easy access to talents. So that's where Plant Futures comes in, and we're really the missing bridge. And finally, how can students join the community? How can you be part of Plant Futures or start this on your own campus? We have close to 20 universities enrolled in our student chapter network right now, and we're looking to expand that chapter ecosystem. So we are actively recruiting co-founders and leaders on different campuses who want to start the Plant Futures community and ultimately bring our program to their campus and grow the Plant Futures community more than anything, connect to other students who are interested in food and tech, and plant-based nutrition and plant-based health, public health, all these different sectors and areas, disciplines that connect to plant-based food, and really bring those students together on their campus, and then ultimately bring our resources and our program that started at UC Berkeley and make it accessible to students through our chapter network. So this is the website if you are interested in joining the chapter network, or maybe even just joining as a member. If you don't want to be a co-founder, is totally fine too. We're looking for both members, for co-founders to get this up and running. We have an application on our website, and then we are also pretty active on our social media channels, which you see on the top left. We're currently running an online webinar series. We have different guest speakers come in every week talking about a bunch of different topics, and you can find our schedule on our social media accounts. We have free webinars where you can register. We have our annual event in January We're probably going to start doing that big event twice a year. And then we're down the road, we plan on offering the challenge lab throughout different semesters, like a fall semester challenge lab, summer, spring, and open it up to students across the world who, if they complete the challenge lab, would receive a certificate of completion for being part of the Plant Futures community and network. With that, I'll take a pause because I know I'm a little bit over my time, to see if anyone has questions. And I'm also happy to share the video that I didn't get a chance to get to that has more information about the challenge lab.
Thank you so much, Sam. I guess it was quite informative. I'll open the floor for questions if anyone has anything to ask to Sam. The next speaker we have is Dr. Ram, and giving a talk today on sustainable architecture and how could you learn, or one learn, from traditional construction techniques. So Ram, I'll assign your co-host. Are you there, Ram?
Yeah, good afternoon from UBC. My name is Ramadurai. I'm just visiting UBC. I'll be back in April to India. Anurag met me last week and told me to give my little talk on sustainable and traditional architecture. And I am going to, there are sustainable and traditional architecture all over the world. I'm just going to focus on one part of India because there are too many, but the approach is exactly the same. Maybe the way it is constructed is different, using the material is different, but the idea behind it is the same. So vernacular, what we call it, the vernacular architecture, which is a local architecture, is very little known and less explored. So basically, this is a very cost-effective, ecologically sensible, and culturally relevant tradition. And this has been there for a very long time. As you note, the sustainability was part of every civilization which has survived. So they were living, eating, and working and hunting in the way it is sustainable. So what we need to do as a more of new generation and educated is to revisit and validate the traditional method rather than either taking it blindly or just ignoring it. So revisit and validate is very important. So you could see various structures around our indigenous people and learn from that. And also learn from nature, like the biomimicry is all about. You use those ideas into the engineering and build. Then to keep the cultural aspect intact, artisanal approach along with engineering solution. Engineering solutions definitely bring a good amount of value. But there are artisanal approach which are sustainable and which are very aesthetically appealing. So when we do architectural design, we have to keep following things in mind. Like, how do we do, global warming is a major issue. How do you keep track of it? And we don't contribute to that. And most of the earlier generation, probably last century, it was all about frugal use of resources. That was a very good idea, which in today's context, people don't value resources as much, especially younger generation. They're very wasteful and not paying attention to resources. The younger generation, of course, has come to term with reuse, reduce, and renew while choosing the material for construction or architecture. And and optimize in the sense, the sustainability, aesthetics, functionality, quality, and cost. Everything has to be in one place while designing. Otherwise, you miss out on many things. So I'm going to talk about a typical sustainable traditional architecture in southern part of India, which is very tropical. So what they do, how they did design, and they still continue. There have been many people currently also operation architecturally, but it was all influenced when recently in 1945, Laurie Baker came to India and asked Mahatma Gandhi, I want to contribute to here, what should I do? Gandhi said, you go to the villages, go to the town and find out what is the architecture which are relevant there and document it. So Laurie Baker was one who influenced many people in India, today's India, in tropical design. So which is basically tile roof, verandas, courtyards, open layout, and suitable for multi-generational inhabitants, incorporating art, craft, and of the region. Because art is very important to keep us culturally connected to the past. So this is some examples of architecture which are in practice. These are real houses. Tiled roof with ventilation, verandas, which keeps the sun out of the house. There are courtyards to of course, plants to grow, as well as open space and sunlight coming in. The open layout is to connect with everyone around at the house at the same time. When you're in kitchen, when you're in living room, or when you're in the balcony. So art and craft was integrated. So artisans were used in past days to build house. It was actually crafting a house rather than building a house. So that's a typical example of a flooring tile. This floor tile has been influenced from Morocco, and it was very popular in southern part of India. So it's got a lot of designs, colors. So while we are choosing material, it is important to see the carbon footprint and recyclable part. Carbon footprint is important because we are sourcing part very far away from China or for some other Italy or wherever it is, or from Scandinavia, which is very important to choose local material with the lowest carbon footprint. That's very important. And reuse as much as possible existing wood or existing stone or a steel from a old house. I'll give you some examples of those. And in sustainable building, they use least amount of manufactured material because it has the carbon footprint, like energy consumption, while making tiles like ceramic and etc. Of course, appliances is used even in everyone is using now. There is no need to sell those ideas. And I mean, if you see some of these indigenous houses, they are built with stone and left unplastered, so that there is no need for plaster and painting. So that saves a lot of money, plus it protects the environment. I'll give you an example of those subsequently. And automation is used least. That again, this is the style in India, in southern part of India, where artisans are used to handcraft. They use natural materials like beeswax, don't use columns, so that the building is load bearing and the walls are load bearing. Traditional methods of flooring, you saw one of the examples of that, and cladding. So this uses natural material rather than manufactured ceramic, which uses a lot of energy. And repurpose waste material, because when you're constructing, there is a lot of material which are left out, which could be used for making furniture or other items for the use of the house. So this is an example of slate and walls which are not in the toilet, and the flooring which are not using any manufactured material, of course, other than the toilet fittings. So that's an example. And the natural light comes from the top, so that you don't need energy when we are using your toilets. Same is with the ventilation. So this is the wall I was talking about. These are called random rubble wall. This is used by indigenous people in British Columbia. Even our Vancouver International Airport uses these methods of constructing. I think their walls and pillars are made out of these. So if you notice, traditional houses has ceiling which are very unique, which I will talk in detail a little later, which is for cooling the house, and ventilators and lights to come into the house, which you doesn't use during the whole of during daytime. There is no need for using any energy in the house. This is a zero energy house. And when energy is really required in the night, especially for running a ceiling fan or a light, it uses solar power. So that's a part of the sustainable design. So in India, we have another porous material, which is a volcanic material called laterite stone. I will show you an example. Which absorbs heat and sound. So, and the random rubble, which is here, which is used very much in British Columbia. So these are the ones which reduce the heat penetration. For example, here they use for keeping it warm inside. The filler slab is what I was telling you about. This is the filler slab. Now, what we do when we are casting the ceiling to pour concrete, before pouring concrete, they put these clay tiles. See, these clay tiles are hollow, and they keep the house clean and use less amount of concrete to pour. This concrete is important because you want to construct one floor on the top or keep the roof on the top. But then to reduce the amount of concrete you pour in, they use these clay tiles as a filler. Then there are these ceilings which are very high, which is one which is used for cooling the house. So that's a filler slab you can see on the top, and there are ventilators on the ceiling so that the hot air goes out. Wider, the windows are very wide because the lights have to come in, and then also the ventilations. And house is surrounded. I mean that example which we showed of the veranda. The house is surrounded with usually a lot of space, so that the trees can be planted and the cooling effect can come in. Shades can come in. So lesser built up area. So whenever you built the least amount of area in a plot. And the central courtyard can give you the natural lights and ventilation. So that's the filler slab. And while implementing, I was mentioning about today technology can be used for harnessing solar power so that you can be literally zero carbon footprint house. There are houses which are zero carbon footprint. And also to be environmentally friendly, rainwater harvesting. When you're building a house, you can always have sumps so that you can store water when it is raining and then can be used over the year. I have a friend of mine who doesn't use any outside water. He stores the rainwater, 3 months of rain in Bangalore, and uses for the 9 months of the year. So he doesn't use any water from outside. Same when you're constructing, you can put in methods of gray water recycle, reuse, waste disposal like composting, and use reused furnitures from in India we have a huge reused furniture markets. So where you can buy 50-year-old cupboards or beds, etc. So that's a typical. This is the house I was telling you, where you could use 2 types of material. One on the left side you see a random rubble, which is made out of stones, and on the front it is the laterite stones, which keeps the house cool. So that's this, just before the sunset, when there is a sun setting, it is falling on the building, so that it keeps the house cool. So that's the typical way. Most of these principles can be used in building houses anywhere. It doesn't. This is just an example of one in the tropical. This one. So one of the architects who built that house is here. Anybody wants to visit their websites, it's here. And if you have any questions, I can take. Thank you.